You've always known something was different about you, even if you didn't have the words for it. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't something you could show people or prove with evidence. It was a quiet awareness inside you, a subtle whisper that said you weren't built like the rest of the world. Other people walked through life like it was a straight road with clear signs and predictable turns. But for you, life was always a labyrinth. You didn't simply react to things. You felt them, analyzed them, absorbed them into your bones. You didn't just see people. You sensed them, understood the fear behind their anger, the insecurity behind their confidence, the emptiness behind their smiles. And for the longest time, you thought this difference was a flaw. You thought being not like others meant you were somehow behind, somehow disconnected, somehow broken. But the truth is exactly the opposite. The reason you're watching this right now is because you've reached the point where your difference is no longer something to hide. It's something you need to understand. Growing up, you likely saw the world in slow motion, not literally, but emotionally. While others rushed, you paused. While others wanted attention, you wanted meaning. While others wanted noise, you looked for silence, because silence was the only place where things made sense to you. You weren't born into the world. You were born into observation. Every room you entered, you studied. Every conversation you had, you replayed. Every person you met, you read like a book. You learned people before you learned yourself. And because of that, you probably understood things too early, things you weren't supposed to carry, things adults around you didn't even understand themselves. That is the curse and blessing of being a deep soul. You feel the world before you learn how to survive in it. And because you were different, you also learned loneliness early. But not the loneliness of having no one around. It was the loneliness of being surrounded by people who couldn't meet you where you truly were. The loneliness of being the one who cared more, felt more, noticed more. You could be in a room full of friends and still feel like you were standing outside a window, looking in. It wasn't that people disliked you. It's that they couldn't access the depth of your world. You lived internally, and most people live externally. You saw layers, and they only saw surfaces. You asked why everything was the way it was, and they just accepted things as they were. But here's the part no one told you. This difference wasn't an accident. It was a psychological structure built into you. Some people are born with minds that dive beneath reality. Some are born with a sensitivity to the unseen, a natural intuition that other people only develop through suffering or age. Jung said that certain individuals are born with a compass facing inward, a mind that seeks meaning instead of pleasure, truth instead of comfort, depth instead of distraction. You are one of them. And this type of mind often goes through the same journey. First comes confusion. You wonder why others don't think the way you think, why they don't feel the way you feel, why they don't understand what is obvious to you. Then comes self-blame. You start believing you're too sensitive, too intense, too complicated. You learn to shrink, to hide your questions, to soften your voice, to pretend your mind is quieter than it is. Because when you tried to express the way you think, people told you you were overreacting, overthinking, being dramatic, being different. So you learned to live two lives, the one inside your head and the one you performed for the world. But deep thinkers don't stay hidden forever. Something happens to them eventually, something small, something random, something that seems insignificant to others, but feels like a turning point inside. Maybe it was a heartbreak that cut too deep, or a betrayal that woke something in you, or a moment of silence where you finally realized you were tired of pretending. But whatever it was, it pushed you inward even more, into the depths of your own mind where truth lives. And the truth hit you. You were never supposed to be like others. You were supposed to see what others ignore. You were supposed to feel the things others run away from. You were supposed to question the world, the people, the systems, the beliefs. You weren't meant to fit in. You were meant to see. There comes a moment in every deep thinker's life when they begin to realize that the world they grew up in was never designed for them. You've probably noticed this too. You tried to follow the rules that everyone else followed. You tried to want the things they wanted. You tried to care about what they cared about. But no matter how hard you tried, something always felt off. It wasn't rebellion. It wasn't ego. It wasn't superiority. It was simply misalignment. Your internal world did not match the external world. And for years, you assumed the problem was you. But now you're beginning to see something you never allowed yourself to fully admit. There was never anything wrong with you. You just lived in a world too shallow for the depth of your mind. Growing up, you noticed things adults ignored. You heard the emotion behind their words, sensed their fears, felt their tension. You saw the cracks in their confidence, the insecurities they hid behind anger, the sadness they masked behind forced strength. You watched people pretend, while you stood there wondering why no one acknowledged the truth everyone could feel. Deep thinkers are born with emotional X-ray vision. You can't help it. You see the truth, even when you don't want to. You feel the reality behind the mask. And that made childhood harder for you than for others. Because while other kids believed everything they were told, you sensed contradictions. When someone said, "I'm fine," you knew they weren't. When someone pretended to love, you saw the emptiness behind their eyes. When someone acted strong, you detected the fear beneath their breath. And because you saw so much, you learned how to adjust yourself around people. You became the peacekeeper, the quiet observer, the one who made yourself smaller, just so others wouldn't feel threatened by your awareness. You hid your truth because you knew the world wasn't ready for it. People like you learn to carry emotional weight that's not theirs. You notice and absorb so much that you end up carrying the moods of everyone around you. If someone was hurting, you felt it in your chest. If someone was angry, you felt it in your stomach. If someone was lying, you felt it in your mind. And because you didn't have language for this sensitivity back then, you internalized it as your own emotional burden. You began to believe you were responsible for everyone's feelings, that you had to fix everything, that you needed to be the strong one, the stable one, the understanding one. This is where the deep thinker's trap begins. You become the person everyone leans on, even when you have no one to lean on yourself. You become the listener, the healer, the safe place. But the irony is this: the people you support rarely understand the mind that supports them. They come to you because you understand them, not because they understand you. And slowly, without even realizing it, you start shrinking yourself to match the emotional capacity of others. You start dimming your thoughts so you don't overwhelm anyone. You start withholding your truth because you're afraid it will make you more isolated. But here's the part that hurts the most. Deep thinkers rarely get the same depth they give. You offer people a level of understanding and compassion they've never experienced. But when you need the same, most don't know how to offer it back. Not because they don't care, but because they simply don't have the depth to meet you where you are. And this is the moment where your loneliness becomes visible. This is when you realize that being not like others is both a gift and a wound. You were born with a mind that stretches beyond the surface of life. But because of that, you often end up alone in rooms where everyone else feels perfectly comfortable. You begin to search for connections that feel familiar to your soul. You want people who don't get intimidated when you speak with depth. You want someone who doesn't confuse your intensity with negativity. You want someone who understands that your silence isn't anger, but introspection. You want someone who hears what you don't say, because that's how you've lived your whole life. But these people are rare. Deep connections are rare. And the deeper your mind goes, the rarer they become. Most people don't want to explore themselves. They don't want to confront their wounds. They don't want to look beneath the surface because they fear what they'll find. You, however, have always been drawn to the truth, even when it scared you. You've always been curious about the mechanics of human behavior, the roots of pain, the structure of desire, the architecture of the mind. That's why nothing superficial satisfies you. That's why you lose interest in people who lack emotional honesty. That's why you detach when you sense someone's intentions aren't pure. You've spent your entire life trying to understand people, while most people have never tried to understand themselves. And yet, something important is shifting inside you right now. You're beginning to realize that your depth isn't something you need to hide anymore. You've spent years watering yourself down, making yourself easier to digest, presenting only the light parts of your mind while keeping the shadows hidden. You've learned how to make your thoughts sound simple just to avoid sounding complicated. But this self-betrayal has exhausted you. You are tired of pretending to be ordinary. You are tired of carrying insight with no place to put it. You are tired of giving understanding without receiving it. There's a moment every deep thinker reaches, where the pain of hiding reaches a threshold. Not a dramatic explosion, but a quiet internal shift. Something inside you finally whispers, enough. Enough of shrinking. Enough of explaining your depth to people who can't meet it. Enough of carrying emotional loads that aren't yours. Enough of betraying yourself just to make others comfortable. Enough of living in a world that wasn't built for minds like yours. And in that moment, something inside you breaks open, not in destruction, but in awakening. That awakening is happening to you now. That's why you're seeing this. You're beginning to allow yourself to step into the truth of who you are. You're beginning to accept that you were never meant to be universally liked. You were meant to be understood by a few and misunderstood by many. You were meant to be the outlier, the observer, the silent thinker in a loud world. Because the world needs minds like yours. Minds that question, minds that feel, minds that see beyond the obvious. You may not realize it yet, but deep thinkers shape the world more than anyone else. They create meaning, awaken consciousness, challenge illusions, and inspire transformation. They see patterns others miss. They sense shifts before they happen. They understand human nature in ways that others overlook. And because of that, your existence is not a mistake. Your difference is not an accident. Your depth is not a burden. You are the way you are because someone has to be. Someone has to carry the insight. Someone has to break the patterns of shallow living. Someone has to wake people up, not through noise, but through presence. Someone has to feel what others refuse to feel. Someone has to think what others fear to think. And that someone has always been you. You're not like others, not because you're superior, but because you're necessary. You're different because you were built to see what others don't. You're watching this because something inside you is finally ready to claim the truth you've been carrying your entire life. You're not like others. And that difference is your gift, not your curse. If you reached this point, it means something in you is already changing. You don't click on videos like this by accident. You don't stay till the end unless a part of your mind is waking up, rising, remembering who you were before the world told you to shrink. You're not like others, and deep down, you've always known it. This is your sign to stop running from your own depth. This is your moment to choose the life your mind was built for. If this spoke to you, let me know in the comments what part hit you the hardest. I read every comment, and your stories matter more than you think. Like this video, so more people who feel like you can find it. Subscribe to join a community of minds that see the world differently. And if you want to support the channel, consider sending a super thanks. It helps me create the kind of videos that speak to souls like yours.